Welcome to Pulse, the CHEETAH Product Podcast. I'm Bruce Swann, Senior Director of Product Marketing at CHEETAH Digital, and I'm joined today by David Raab, founder of the CDP Institute, where, among other things, we'll talk about data, analytics, marketing technology, and customer data platforms. David, super excited to have you on and look forward to this conversation.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
David, I first became aware of your content and your contributions to the marketing world quite some time ago in my career at a company called Customer Insight Company based out of Englewood, Colorado. And I remember early on in my days there, somebody handed me a report. It was a David Raab report where you covered all of the marketing tech vendors that were around at that time. And for me, as an aspiring marketing technologist, that was gold. And I was just so appreciative of that content. And I probably have it somewhere, that report, but I can still picture it in my mind, a spiral-bound notebook full of rich information. And yet here I am, probably 20 years later, still consuming your content and learning about the marketing tech landscape like CDP. So what I would ask of you is what inspires you to work with marketers and produce content that helps marketers?
Well, as you say, I've been doing that for longer than I care to admit. And what inspires me is, well, I am a marketer by trade. It's been a long time since I was a practicing marketer. I'm a practicing marketer now at the Institute, oddly enough. So I kind of come full circle. But I've just always wanted to help other marketers because technology is really tough. And as you say, from back in the old CIC days, which is more than 20 years ago now, it's just gotten tougher. It's gotten more confusing, more complicated. And I just kind of want to help my peers to do a better job.
And I wasn't going to mention that it was actually 20 years ago, but now that you bring that up, yes, it was 20 years ago. And
well, let me be clear. That was my dad, actually.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah, and but fascinating times for me to begin a career in marketing technology back then with cutting edge technology that helped marketers at the time for that particular company, Customer Insight Company, for marketers at financial institutions to help them understand who their customers are, create segments, target them with the right offers, figure out cross-sell opportunities. And what fascinates me is I think back all those years to what marketers back then were trying to do. It's eerily similar to what they're trying to do now in some ways. And it just goes to say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I'm just curious as to your take. I mean, what are marketers still trying to do? That was a challenge back then, but then also, in this world of real-time streaming data and all these different channels where customers engage, what's so different?
Right. Well, if you remember CIC, the big thing was a matrix marketing report.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that, which meant that you looked at all your customers and you figured out what was the right offer to give each customer that month, because you did it once a month back then. So guess what? We're still trying to figure out what the right offer is to give each customer now. It's a little more often to be updated than monthly, but the basic issues haven't changed. It's still all about understanding your customers and figuring out what it is that's the most appealing and appropriate offer for them. So that stuff doesn't change. And we were doing that, even before those days.
Well, just to be clear, the offers were intended to be delivered via direct mail. Email was just coming on the scene. So obviously that touches on what's changed in this world we live in, where there's so many different touch points where customers can engage. But it is interesting to me to see that marketers still are looking for that single view of customers and be able to better understand who they are and anticipate what they're likely to do next. And if we fast forward a little bit, a few years back, you founded the CDP Institute. So tell me a little bit about what led to that.
So, all right. So in 2013, I actually named the CDP category because I was seeing something that was new, which was that we were seeing systems that were actually building their own marketing database as well as being an application. Because up until then, you would build your marketing database as a custom project. big data warehouse someplace, either yourself or you go out and hire, an Axiom or someone to do it for you. And then you would buy a piece of campaign management software like a Unica, probably the best known of those guys, and you would make the two together. So all of a sudden, as I say, around 7 years ago, we saw a bunch of systems that were actually building their own database as well as the application. So that was a new thing to have those together in the same product. And so it needed a name, and kind of looked around, and the letters CD and P were available. So we found something that matched CDP, and so we named it. And then really nothing happened for about 3 years. And in 2016, for reasons I've never figured out, it just took off. And at that point, a couple of the vendors in the space, which I've been writing about all along, came to me and said, "Hey, we getting a lot of interest in this. We want to kind of promote the category. You're the obvious person to do it." So I didn't want to do it for any one vendor, but we just found a vendor neutral way to do it, which is to do it in the Institute. So the Institute, any CDP vendor can join. And they finance our operations. And our job is just to go out and kind of explain CDPs to the world. So not a bad deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting how something like that evolves. Like you mentioned, uh, you first started focusing in on customer data platforms in 2013, but it really didn't take off until 2016. And what do you think led to that? I mean, you mentioned you're not quite sure, but did you think it had to do with just the sheer amount of data that's out there, or the different source systems, or the different channels in which customers engage, or a combination of all of that? Is that a big part of what lent to the emergence of CDPs?
Well, again, I really honestly have never quite figured it out.
Yeah.
Certainly there has been this continuous expansion in the amount of data that marketers were struggling with. And one of the things that's been always interesting in tracking marketing technology is that there's a very definite cycle where you get marketers will find that they're having a problem themselves in their own business. And half the CDP vendors are ex-marketers who found this problem. And then they'll go off and say, "Oh, wow, there's no solution to this. I'm going to go off and build one because there's obviously a market, because if I have the need, everybody else has the same need." And then they go away for 3 years and they work in their basement. And then, like, on the same day, they all roll out and they kind of, from their basement, this thing, and they look up and down the driveway, and there's their neighbor also rolling out exactly the same product on the other side. So you have all these systems just kind of bursting onto the scene simultaneously, and that for sure happened with CDPs. So it's just a kind of maturity thing. You had to have the problem be there, then you had to have people recognize the problem, and then they had to develop solutions, and then they all sort of pop out more or less at the same time. That's what happened.
So if somebody were to approach you today, and just, I might be taking a few steps back, but if somebody were to approach you right now and say, "Hey, what is the CDP? There's so many acronyms and buzzwords and technologies that are out there. I think I need a CDP. What is it? What would be your response to a simple question like that?"
Okay, well, we have a definition, of course, which, unify package software that builds a unified, persistent customer database accessible to other systems. And we can take the next hour dissecting that. But basically, it's what we said. Again, go back to that origin story. It's package software that's building a database. It didn't used to have package software to do that. And it's pulling in all your data and it's sharing it out. That was one of the changes in 2013. The systems that we saw were systems that were building a database more or less for their own purposes, so to do predictive modeling or to do campaign management or uh, audiences for display ads, whatever it was. But then quickly, everyone realized that the data that was being assembled was more important than the application. So
Right.
I can go out and buy a predictive modeling tool. They're a dime a dozen. But building that database is really tough. So the vendors, some quicker than others, came to that realization and began to focus more and more on building the database and then making it open so that any other system could take advantage of that. So that's been the big change. And in terms of whether you have need for a CDP, we sometimes joke that the proper sales pitch is, "Well, do you have data? Yeah, I have data. Is your data perfect? No, it's not perfect. Well, you need a CDP. Sign here," and that's how you sell a CDP. A little more realistically, if you have data that has to be pulled together from multiple systems, that's really the thing that marketers struggle to do without a CDP. So I
Right.
have several data sources. I have to build that unified profile, pull them together, make that available. That's usually what says, "Hey, wait a minute, I need a CDP," because there's no other tool that's out there that's really been designed to do that.
Yep. Yep. Okay. And we've been talking a lot about uh, CDPs and the CDP Institute. Uh, how would you like the audience to how would you like them to understand what you bring to the table? I know I'm very familiar with CDP Institute, as we're a sponsor and we're closely with you here at CHEETAH, but what would you want the listeners to know and understand about what it is that you do and the type of content that you provide?
I guess they should just go to www.cdpinstitute.org and find out for themselves. But and that's www.cdpinstitute.org.
And we'll give you an opportunity to mention that one more time at the end. So, yeah, very good.
But okay, aside from the paid political announcement there, they should realize, again, we are vendor neutral. So what we have there is we have a very large library of papers that have been contributed by various folks. We've written some, but most of them come from the vendors. So it's kind of one-stop shopping for information. We have many other resources. There's a blog, there's a newsletter, there's vendor comparison reports that gives a kind of an apples to apples comparison of different vendors. So there's just a lot of things that we do, and they're all aimed, again, at helping marketers, because that it really is what I've spent most of my life, certainly all my professional career, doing, is really just to help them make sense of this crazy thing. And customer data is just arguably the hardest thing of all, right? And we all know how to do email. We all know how to do a website. And we can do a lot of those things, and not that they're easy, and there are great tools for it, but bringing that customer data together, that's been the really toughest thing. And that's kind of the foundation, or it is the foundation that everything else is built on. So that's where marketers really need the help. And that's the mission of the Institute. And we have a lot of great resources there.
And that's www.cdpinstitute.org. One more time, if
that is
listeners didn't catch that. I mean, I personally am a huge fan of the content as a marketer. I continually find myself reading blog posts or looking at different reports and such, but also as a product marketer here at CHEETAH Digital, I know we're excited to be a sponsor and work closely with you and the CDP Institute regarding the CHEETAH Customer Engagement Suite that has solutions for cross-channel campaign management, customer experiences, and customer loyalty, but also has a core underpinning called the CHEETAH Engagement Data Platform, which is recognized as a CDP and has meaningful capabilities such as the ability to ingest data from many sources in real time, data connectors, triggering and messaging capabilities, analytics and machine learning, and data management. And we look forward to an upcoming audit with you where you'll further validate our CDP offering and learn even more about what we do with our CHEETAH Engagement Data Platform. And we're certainly excited about that. So we know there's a lot of marketers out there who are looking at different vendors like CHEETAH or others out there. What are common mistakes or traps that you see brands and marketers falling into when they're making a technology selection, and how can they avoid that?
Okay, actually, before I answer that, which is a great question, which I'm happy to answer, you talked about the scope, because one of the problems that marketers run into with CDPs is there are a lot of CDPs. We count 120 at the moment, maybe 122, depending on who I include. And there's a wide variety. Some just do that data assembly work that I was talking about. They all do that, or you couldn't be a CDP. But then some have the scope that you were just describing for CHEETAH, where they do predictive modeling, they do campaign management. Some of them actually will do the messaging delivery. They'll send the emails, they'll do the website personalization. So that's a super confusing situation. And a lot of marketers look at CDP, and first they get really excited because, oh, someone's solving my problem, my data problem. They say, wow, there's 120 of these things and they're all different. How am I possibly going to make sense of that? So we classify the CDPs, but really it comes down to your original question here about, well, how do I make the right choice? What are the mistakes that I want to avoid? Well, the biggest mistake marketers make is not to understand what they're trying to accomplish in the first place, not to predefining their use cases. We talk endlessly about use cases, but I've recently concluded that no matter how much I talk about use cases, it's not enough. It is so central to define in advance what you actually want to achieve with the tool, because then you can go out and say, okay, well, if this is what I want to use the tool for, these are the features I need. If I don't have a predictive modeling capability in my company and I need predictive modeling, I should look for a CDP that has predictive modeling. And I can find plenty. But if I don't need that, I really don't want to buy a tool that's got things I don't need in it, because it's going to cost me extra money and extra complexity and so on. And down and down and down that, do I have great campaign management? Do I need to integrate in real time? Most of them do, but not everybody does. So what am I actually trying to accomplish? Because then I can have my little list of requirements, and then I have something to compare concretely against what all the CDP vendors do. So that is by far, and it sounds, of course we would do that, right? But, when we look at mistakes and we do some surveys on this, people who focus on ease of use are not very happy with their results often. Yeah, it's easy to use. Of course, it doesn't do what I need, but it's easy to use. Not a really good way to select a tool, even with a very common mistake, low cost, same thing. It doesn't matter if it's cheap if it doesn't do what you need, right? So yeah. There are a couple of really common mistakes like that unfortunately marketers make over and over and over again and again. I've been doing this for many, many years, and that's another thing that doesn't change.
And as a technology provider, I mean, we're starting to see and hear that as well, where marketers are and brands are coming to us with specific use cases, or maybe they're being inspired by some of the content out there on CDP Institute. And I think it helps them, the marketer, make the best decision for them that's aligned with the outcomes that they're looking for, but it also helps them see the value of the investment or investments they're making in marketing technology. And so what are opportunities for marketers as they think through, okay, I need a CDP, I need that single accessible view, apply analytics to it. What then is the opportunity? What are they looking to ultimately achieve in the short term, but also the long term?
Ultimately, of course, I guess it's a cliche, they want to, give a great customer experience, right? That's what everyone is trying to accomplish. And of course, that's more than just marketing, because you have your service and your support and your sales groups, all of whom are contributing to customer experience. We're experiencing that now with things like lockdowns more than else, right? How good is the curbside service of this place versus that place? That's such a critical factor in whether I go back there or not. And it's not really a marketing thing, but boy, your marketers are going to have a hard time selling your business if your business doesn't give good service. So, and that is a very technologically enabled thing. There's been a lot of recent technology focusing on how do I make that experience better, which still requires customer data. That's going to data that is hopefully in your CDP if you have a CDP, and if you don't have a CDP, you're going to have a hard time assembling it to support those kinds of operations just as much as your marketing. And of course, again, they're totally related, right? Because
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And that marketers are, it's all about the experience. And marketers do more than just sell products now, where they're accountable for the customer experience, which could be part service related, part just providing messaging and updates and different things like that. And without having a CDP in that single view, it's often difficult to do that. One sort of final question I would have is, if you were to look into the crystal ball, say 3 years down the road, what do you think CDPs and marketing technology will look like? What will evolve in the coming years?
Well, look back 3 years and think what you would have predicted. And right. The only thing I will tell you is you would have been wrong, right? As would have I. I'm always very skeptical about specific predictions. On the other hand, will customer data be important? For sure. That we can count on that. I'm pretty sure after all the work we put in at the Institute now that there will be a box in people's diagram that has their customer data in it, and it will say CDP on it, which in some ways was sort of the mission of the Institute, was to get people to understand that that's a thing, because when we started, people didn't even have the notion of, I need a central unified data store. That was, and there's still, until fairly recently, some major vendors whose names we won't mention who were kind of arguing against that notion. So that's been something that I think is here to stay. The CDP is indeed here to stay. Will it be in the cloud? Will it be on premise? Will it use Hadoop? Will it use some other kind of crazy technology? Who the heck knows, right? I mean, we can't predict at that level, but customers are going to need to be treated well and appropriately. Customer experience is going to be important. Those kinds of things are not going to change. There'll be new channels, but But the core notion of understanding what customers need and then meeting those needs, that's going to be there, and that's going to require a lot of data.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, who knew what we would have predicted 20 years ago when I was at Customer Insight Company and you were producing the Raab report, but yet here we are. It's so exciting to talk to you. I always learn quite a bit from our interactions, and I love the content on the CDP Institute and also being a sponsor as a vendor. And just to remind everybody, check out cdpinstitute.org. You get access to educational materials, news about the industry and different developments, best practice guides, and benchmarks, a director of vendors, and so on. I'm sure they could also find you on LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
Cool.
LinkedIn, Twitter, we're there.
All right, David, thank you so much. Be well. Really appreciate the time spent, and I hope to see you in person soon. I can't wait to do that. And for the audience, feel free to share this on LinkedIn or like us on YouTube or Facebook, and spread the word about the Pulse podcast. Let's talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.